Hello, welcome to the Zoning Design Review Board meeting for April 12th. I'd like to call the meeting to order and roll call.
All right. Member Laz?
Here.
Member Allen?
Yes.
Member Tigert?
Here.
Vice Chair Dorman?
Here.
Chair Cook?
Here.
Let the record show that we're all here.
Excellent. Rise for Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we move to adopt the agenda, I've been informed that 5 items were noticed and 2 have been removed. 6505 Washington Street and 8 Staggs View will both be moved to the meeting on May 10th. Okay, so can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion, agenda is adopted. There were no items on the previous minutes, so we can skip that. Public comment for items not on the agenda. Is anybody here for something that's not on the agenda? They'd like to have a word? Okay, we can skip that. Okay, we can move to the first item, 16-732, 2230 Madison Street.
So good evening. Tonight you have before you a sign code amendment for the Napa Valley Lodge property, and they currently have an internally illuminated monument sign that's located on Madison, shown here in the photo, and facing the highway. It's an approximately 39 square foot sign in size, and it shows a plastic panel that's internally illuminated. And this is the sign that they seek to change the colors and the copy and to reduce it in size to approximately 32 square feet to have the same logo and name, but to slightly reduce it and to change the colors and add a stone base to it, shown here in this photo. And this sign would be in addition to other existing signs at the Napa Valley Lodge property. Their other main sign is also a freestanding sign at the corner of Madison and Washington, shown on the left here. It's really oriented toward Washington, whereas the proposed sign for alteration tonight is oriented on Madison. This sign is about 15 square feet, and then there are 2 signs on the pilasters to the driveways that announce arrival at Napa Valley Lodge with the address as well on the other pilaster, and this is in about 14 square feet. So Napa Valley Lodge has 2 frontages on Madison and Washington, and when those are considered based on the square footage, they're permitted a total of 45 square feet of signage. All the signs you see here were approved. However, the sign they are seeking to modify is classified as a legal non-conforming sign because it doesn't neatly fit within a definition of today's ordinance. While it faces the highway, it's not technically a Highway 29 sign because it is not on a property that abuts the highway, and because it's freestanding and not located on a wall. It has a couple issues there as fitting within that definition. However, if considered a Highway 29 sign, and when this property came before the ZDRB in 2011, it was noted as a Highway 29 sign and considered an extra allotment to their signage. And so at 39 square feet, it exceeds the maximum size of any sign, should be no more than 30 feet. And by bringing it to 32 square feet, it brings it into closer conformance with the code. There are other measures that they are taking to bring this sign into better conformance with the code, and that is that it is no longer internally illuminated, and there will be both downlighting and direct lighting on the stone and the sign that's more accent and direct lighting. So that is more consistent. Like I say, the reduction in size is consistent, and just the quality and materials and colors are more in keeping with the Napa Valley Lodge and of the neutral and muted color scheme that is really preferred by the code when it relates to colors of the building. So we are recommending approval of this sign. We are suggesting the conditions of approval that are in the attachment. However, I do want to slightly modify proposed condition number 5 to use the hours that we now apply to work near on Washington and the main thoroughfares, especially next to lodging, and that's from 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. in terms of noise. But I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here as well to present his project and answer questions as well.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Mikhail?
So because this is technically legal non-conforming, like you said, similar to an issue I think that which comes up later in the meeting as well, as long as it doesn't increase on that, anything taken towards what is now conforming is a step in the right direction in terms of...
Essentially, yes, but the legal non-conforming section of the code as it relates to signs specifically discusses a change in colors and materials and copy, but there is, and bringing that more into conformance with the code. Those are the terms it uses, so yes.
Okay, that's it.
Barbara? Karen? Gary?
I just have a couple of comments. I like the sign. I just, 17.92.070 talks about non-conforming signs, and it says any sign lawfully existing, which this one is, that does not conform, shall be deemed to be a legally non-conforming sign. And may be continued until such time as it is redesigned, dimensioned, relocated, or otherwise significantly altered. So, and that's in the newly adopted sign code. So that indicates to me that if it is significantly altered by redesign, dimension, relocation, then it's no longer a legally non-conforming sign subject to 17.104. Now, I'm not saying that we can do anything or should do anything about that, but I think we do need to mention in a finding, we need to have some sort of a specific finding about, because what Sandra is saying is in 104, it says changes to the text or color of a legally non-conforming sign shall be approved if the changes bring the sign into closer conformance. So, and that's what we're saying here, is it's coming into closer conformance. But I just think we need to address in the findings how we are making those two things fit together. And I also am wondering if we should address in the findings that if the 2011 ZDRB considered a Highway 29 sign, and we are no longer considering it that, perhaps we need to address that in our finding also.
Okay.
I agree. That's interesting. Is it at all precedent setting to be changing, calling it a Highway 29 sign or not calling it a Highway 29 sign? Are we opening the door for freestanding Highway 29 signs?
Well, until the R&D Kitchen project, all of the Highway 29 signs were freestanding. So it's just an actual condition here that we see in town. I would say as to precedent setting, new freestanding highway signs 29 signs would not fit within that definition, so they could not be construed as such.
And they can't use this as an example because it's
This is
considered
non-conforming.
legal non-conforming. Okay. Okay. Any other questions of staff? Okay. Would the applicant like to make some comments? Please come on up to the microphone and state your name.
Well, thank you. And nice presentation, Sandra. I would just like to add, in addition to what Sandra said.
You are with the Napa Valley Lodge, or?
Oh, I'm Tim McGregor, the general manager of the
Excellent.
Napa Valley Lodge. Sorry. And I would just like to add that, as we've made improvements to the property over the last several years, that you've noticed that this sign project just came about as a thoughtful way to continue to make improvements to our property and also, improve the look of the town, and, upon a sign that is 25, 30 years old. So, and it is just overlapping on the existing sign itself. That is the plan. It's not to be any bigger and
It's actually a little smaller, right?
a little
Yeah.
smaller, actually, the sign itself, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of the applicant?
Is this sign actually two-sided? Because the one you currently have is
It
just
is
one-
two-sided,
Okay.
which I think will be a better presentation, because right now you're looking at a brown piece of plywood.
Yeah, exactly. I was looking at that from the perspective
Yeah,
of
it's not-
Washington Street or pedestrians, and it's like, well, it's obviously a Highway 29 sign because it's the only side that has
So,
any contrast.
just like everything, our intention is to make everything look a little better.
Absolutely.
Okay.
How do you light the sign? On both sides with,
Well, there is some LED lighting that is consistent with the pilasters that are around the property at the entrance. It's just light down lighting, but it would be exterior uplighting on the sign.
shooting down towards the sign? The light will be shining,
It'll actually be going up from the ground.
so it's from lower to,
Correct.
Any questions? Can I go back and ask a question of staff? Two-sided? Doesn't that double the square footage?
Yes, we hadn't considered that.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all the questions we have of you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, thank you for your consideration.
Is there anybody from the public that would like to make a comment on this? Okay. Then we will move to our conversation. Thank you. Well, we're going to discuss it and then make a decision.
You can hear the decision they make.
You can listen. So now that it's twice the size, what does that change?
Well, that adds more sign area for a
Yes.
sign that is already non-conforming
Yes.
as to total amount.
Yes. What do you, I mean, does that need to be
4 signs now?
reconsidered? Yeah, it's almost, we would consider that.
Is that
like-
3 signs on Madison, or is that, no,
1, 2,
3, 4?
3, 4.
Yeah. So that, does that mean we have to consider it no longer as a legal nonconforming, that it's above and beyond the rules?
I do. I think that's problematic, and I'm sorry I didn't notice that in the drawings, that it was adding a backside to it. But that significantly increases the nature of the nonconformity.
Yes.
So I think a one-sided sign, we can consider a change of color and copy, but that complicates things.
So we can offer
unfortunately.
that as an option of approving it, as long as it's only one-sided, facing Highway 29, even though it's not a Highway 29 sign.
Could we still consider the Highway 29 sign based on the 2011 finding and say it's almost grandfathered into that? And treat it with the current Highway 29 standards?
I would think yes as to the face that faces the highway, but then the side that faces
Yeah.
in would count, and we only have about 16 square feet
Mhm.
of unused signage, and there's 32
32,
square feet
yeah.
here.
Right.
But if we take it as like the one-sided,
Mhm.
again, we could still consider it Highway 29.
Yeah.
so the current sign's just one-sided.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But the idea to make it two-sided was for an aesthetic appeal.
Yeah.
To be one-sided, you'd lose that aesthetic look.
I'm 100% with you. I think it would look better.
But
Yeah.
there's, every business in town is held to a certain limited number of square footage, so if you wanted to have that and take down some other signs, so that to meet the square footage limit, then I guess we could always discuss that.
What's unique about this property is that they do have so very much frontage.
Yes.
But they're held to a much smaller standard, almost similar to a business in town that has businesses on both sides, and they don't have this level of visibility.
But it
So
didn't,
perhaps based on the amount of signage, there may be value in determining that the exception standards could be made, because it does stand separate and apart from most other properties in town.
but didn't we already expand the frontage,
They
the
had a
square footage
50
based on the frontage? 50% increase is allowed to 45 square feet. So that's already been covered for all their frontage.
Well, yes, in terms of the code, but when you
Yes.
look at the actual linear footage that this business has, both on, even just using Madison, they would be, if they weren't constrained to that total of 45, based on frontage, they'd be entitled to more, and then when you consider the 50%, it would even be above and beyond that. So,
So
let's
why?
see, how many linear feet of frontage do we have? You take
370, 320.
So perhaps we could use that number to say, based on how much they have, this is an exceptional property, to allow more, and to not just automatically roll it back to the 30, which becomes 45.
Well, the way the code is written, it bases the square footage on linear feet of frontage, right?
Yes, but then scales it back to no more than 30.
Oh, okay, so no matter what your frontage is,
So they
you're
got
limited
they
to
got
30.
scaled back, even though
Okay.
if we were looking at just lineal frontage, they would have more. And a couple of you threw out that number, so I didn't really hear it. Was it?
320.
Okay.
It's the linear.
But no matter what property in town, what their linear feet actually is, they're limited to 30, and then this is allowed 50% more. So I
Just-
don't really think,
Something interesting to look at would be the marketplace, that really has very little linear building frontage, because the narrow part of the building faces the street, and yet that is a huge property itself. But that fits within that amount. If we were to consider the whole linear front, or the street frontage on Washington, so much more would be permitted there, but we don't consider street frontage, we consider building frontage.
right.
I'm just trying to give you some options if you thought that there was value in approving the sign, and I do think, I think it's an improvement to the property, and I think they have a lot of vantage points that they need to get people. One of the, on your, especially as you're looking at the new proposed side to this sign, it's on your way out of town, and if you happen to miss the lodge, you're at the highway, you can't hang a U-turn, but if someone were to see that sign in time to turn into the driveway maybe, that could improve traffic conditions.
Agreed. They have about 3 or 4 streets that kind of converge at that one stop sign, which makes it a really interesting parcel. But yeah, I'm with you, and we need to find the exception if we want to make it the two-sided.
I tend to be a little more with staying within the limits. I mean, they have a huge banner across the intersection with their name, Napa Valley Lodge, on the stone wall. And then small ones at eye level for the cars. I mean, this is a beautiful sign, and it's much improved over what's there. I don't like going beyond what the code already says, because then everybody wants that, and we try carefully to limit signage and keep it tasteful.
Could you flip back to the original sign for a sec? Location, like, okay.
They'd be in the same
Can
location.
you tell based on that picture where it's located?
Yep.
Okay.
Carrie?
Well, I think, given the two sides, I think we would have a hard time making a finding that it remains legally non-conforming, because I believe that would be a dimension that would be significantly altered. So I think we would have difficulty there. But I am thinking, if on one side or the other, would it still be a sign, or would it be art if no Napa Valley Lodge were on there, but the stylized cluster of grapes were on there? I mean, is that still
Oh,
a
the logo?
sign? Just, right, and no, And I mean, I'm just trying to think out loud here of,
I think,
because as much as I personally like
Yeah,
the sign, we
yeah.
are stuck with,
yeah.
then you are no longer legally non-conforming, depending on the vote of
Yeah,
the
if
other
you've doubled
members,
the,
but that
doubled the
could
size of-
happen.
Yeah. You've changed, yeah.
Sandra, does it make sense to make the sign smaller on both sides? Because we like the design on both sides.
Well, I'd have to look to the applic, and I think some of the goal is having it large enough to capture the eastbound traffic that's coming off the highway. And it would be an added bonus to get that back side, but it's targeting a different audience.
It is pretty hidden back there. I've driven by it a couple of
Yeah.
times.
saying, it's not overt.
It's not an in-your-face kind of sign. It's
No.
really off, it's several feet off the road. And, it's, a significant, just making the sign, it's kind of an expensive sign to make, and it's quite an investment that we're looking at doing. So we're kind of particular on, as I said, the aesthetic look of it and everything, and I really think it just adds to the property, and it's an upgrade for what we have.
Yeah, definitely. It is. It looks good.
I'd like to see it go or approved.
I forgot, the other Napa Valley Lodge signs, are they newer signs? So initially, it was just that sign, is that right? Before the construction?
Over history, they've had a bunch of different signs. It looked like there was a second one of these.
But these two most recent signs, these are newer?
They are new,
2011.
but the pilasters are new and that signage is
Right.
new, but we used to have the same sign, same shape
Right.
that was on the porte cochere, so that was at the entryway versus out on the pilasters.
sign.
And just on the Highway 29 signs, the current code reads, 1 per commercial parcel, 30 square feet in size, identify a business, and be on a building not freestanding. Maybe in addition to all other allowable signs, just to refresh our memories on if it's a 29 sign.
I like the sign. I feel that it's important to stay within code as best we can and not set precedent. Does somebody want to make a motion? Have we reached a point of coming to a consensus? We're not sure until we vote.
Is there, may I ask the applicant another question? Is there a way to make the sign one-sided now, and at some future date, if the code would allow, to add the back panel? Or is it's wood, right? So you'd have to repaint? I mean, is there a way to sort of phase it in
Well,
the
it
event the
would.
code
It's-
might
The
change?
sign is, it's a composite sign that's going to be expensive to make, and so we'd have to remake the whole
Okay.
entire sign that would sit inside the framework there.
But if we double the size of the sign and it falls out of legal nonconforming, then we could actually say you can't have the sign anymore, right? I mean, I don't think we want to go there, but that's how far it's stretching the rules to double the sign.
Is that correct? If it's no longer legally non-conforming, we apply the code or we find a variance? And are we allowed to find a variance? What would our findings have to be?
You may make exception findings. So let me go see what those are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And while you're looking at that, I will say I do have some concerns because we recently addressed this with the Hill family, and because they also had a corner frontage, and we were pretty strict in,
We said this is the amount of square footage you
Right.
can have. You pick what signs you want to
Right.
keep. And they did the next day. One
So-
sign came down so that they could
The
have
issue
their
with
sign.
that one wasn't so much the amount of square footage as it was the number of
The number of
separate
signs.
Right.
But it was still, yeah, it was
Yeah.
violating a
Similar
portion
thing.
of the
I
code,
just
the
wanted
other
to
portion of the
clarify
code.
that.
Yeah, you're right.
yes,
You're
thank
right.
you.
So the code does provide that the ZDRB may grant an exception to the strict application of the provisions of the sign ordinance after making the following findings, and there are 5 of them. 1, there are exceptional circumstances applicable to the property, building, or sign involved which do not generally apply to other property, buildings, or signs in the vicinity, including shape, size, location, surroundings of the property, or type of design of sign involved. Number 2, that owing to these such exceptional circumstances, the literal enforcement of this chapter would result in practical or unnecessary difficulty, not created by or attributable to the property owner. The granting of this exception will not constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with the limitations imposed on other property. Number 4, the granting of this exception will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or to the property or similar improvements in the vicinity. And 5, granting this exception will not be inconsistent with the general purpose or intent of this chapter. So those are essentially variance findings that are termed as exceptions here in the sign code.
Those are pretty big
Pretty big.
and pretty defined. And I don't think we can make.
Pretty hard to
those.
make.
Yes. Okay, so are we leaning more towards one-sided to stay within legal nonconforming? Somebody want to try a motion?
Is there no variance that we get because, I mean, it's an existing sign, so it's already there?
We're not
And-
saying that you have to take it down. We're just,
Well, no, I mean,
Leaving
that's
it-
that's what our other that's our option, is
Right,
that it'll just
right.
remain as it is, which
Yeah.
would be
we're just saying.
less desirable,
Leave
I
it
think.
there, improve it, and leave it one-sided. I mean, that's not what we're saying. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And not two-sided, because that would double the square footage of signage allowed.
Is there a variance because looks prettier two-sided?
Fortunately
I mean,
not.
that's one of the reasons we write, all these codes, is because we want to make sure we have a nice product that we're putting out there and putting the best foot
Yeah.
forward, so to speak, and
That's why they come before us, so that we make sure that, yeah, we agree. But we have to stay within
sure.
the code, because that's why the code is there. And we have to hold to the code as much as we can, because we have a lot of businesses in town that would all like more signage. So we're trying to find a way to keep all your signs and and let you improve that one so that it looks a lot better and benefits you and benefits the town.
So you're looking at it as it's more signage from a marketing standpoint versus an aesthetic.
A code standpoint,
Look.
it's more square footage of sign.
Okay.
Yeah, it's another sign, unless there was some you wanted to take down. Probably not. Those are all nice signs and they're well placed. Yeah.
and I think one thing that we also are struggling with somewhat is, because if you make it a one-sided sign, you're legally non-conforming, then you already have more square footage of signs than the current code would allow you if you came in now. So then to add another 31 to your 60 or whatever puts you far beyond what the code now would allow. And doubling the signage changes you from a legally non-conforming sign to just a non-conforming sign, is my reading of it. I'm not the town
Well-
attorney, but
It would become a legally permitted sign because you'd have findings that support the larger size of the sign.
But we couldn't reach those findings.
if we
Well,
made...
if you were able to
Oh,
make
yeah,
it.
If we were able to
Yeah, which we weren't.
get up the hill of the findings.
Right.
And looking at these, I think you could definitely make some of them. I don't know all of them.
Yeah. Would it help to reread the required findings?
Did anybody want to hear those findings again? I mean, those. Anybody want to make a motion?
Well, I would make a motion to, and bear with me, to accept it as a one-sided sign with findings showing that it is a legally non-conforming sign because it is not substantially altered according to 17.92.070, and a finding that however, it's best to handle the previous ZDRB opinion that it was a Highway 29 sign.
Oh, and approve, conditions of approval with the
changes
adjustment
to
for the time.
number 5 that staff has suggested.
Yeah. Does anybody want to second that?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, we have unanimous approval that you can place the sign, but it has to be one-sided.
Okay. Can you give me some guidelines on what I can put on the other side? Because
Nothing that would make it a sign.
so I don't know. I don't know what the.
Do we have a
You can't put the
do we have a
picture-
definition of a
You
sign?
can't put the
That's a
picture there
logo.
without the,
But that would
It'd
be,
be a piece of art,
that would be a
wouldn't
logo.
without.
That's a
it'd be
logo.
Yeah, and we can't get too involved with content.
True.
I still like the two-sided sign. I wish there's some way you can make it smaller to fit the,
But we just approved
the
it
square footage.
without,
No,
as
they
one-sided.
can-
Okay.
Okay.
We can talk options tomorrow, Tim. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Because maybe there's some definition
you.
of a sign that could be helpful, and anything that doesn't fall within that definition could go on the other side. Maybe that's a way to approach it.
Okay. I'll follow up with Sandra and see what our
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was hard. Because we can't get, okay. Next item on agenda, we're skipping 16701. So we are moving to 16-733, 6740 Washington Street, which is Jessup. Sandra.
Good evening. So tonight you have before you design review for a comprehensive set of hardscape and landscape improvements to the Jessup Cellars property. And Jessup Cellars is a wine tasting room and art gallery that's housed in the larger building on the parcel. And then the smaller building to the south has been approved as a private wine tasting room at the front, and the rear is a dwelling. And there's been some discussion of site open space and use area on this project when it's gone before the town council on past occasions. And the patio that's at the between the main building elements of the larger building serves as site open space. But interestingly, it's used by Jessup during the hours of operation, and it's only really open space after the tasting room closes for the day. And guests are permitted to take their wine out there, but the employees are not permitted to serve employees there. And so it has this dual function of really open space and use area, which is a little unusual. And so when a request was approved earlier that the applicant had presented to council, they had approved a 2.5-foot wrought iron fence in this area. And I mention that because proposed at this time, the applicant seeks to enclose it with a 5-foot tall wood fence. Some of the other improvements are a series of rusted steel walls in the front setback. One is a 7-foot tall wall on the north side, which somewhat functions as an artistic piece because it's not a typical wall from building to property line to corner, whereas the lower walls in the front clearly serve as walls. The one on the north side is 42 inches, while the one on the south side is 36 inches. And what this does is create a new entry point for the Jessup Sellers property, and that's really to secure the property and direct guests to through the front entry, and that's shown off to the left-hand side at that scored patio. And so there will be use of boxwood hedges and roses and other drought-tolerant landscaping. Off to the right, you'll see a new scored patio that's been brought to grade, that's ADA accessible, which could be considered open space, but we don't have exact calculations for the property. So we do look at it as a nice improvement for the Jessup Sellers property, not just from a functional standpoint, but from an aesthetic one. And I know that Jack Chandler is the landscape architect, and this really has his flair to it. So we are supportive of the project. We just want to call out a couple of items for your consideration. And one is that steel wall that I noted earlier, that since it's within the front setback, the code really limits it to 36 inches, and on the one side it's 42 inches. So if that were brought down to 3 feet, we could probably say that complies with the code. There is the section on the north end that is a little hard to classify whether that's a wall or an art piece, but if, in your opinion, it sort of moves more as art, that could be approved at 7 feet. The 5-foot tall wood fence that encloses the patio is another item, and that's because of the history before the council and the fact that it was approved at a lower level, that it sort of had that visual transparency to the space and maintained whatever open space quality it had. Although I do note they're showing the new area to the south, and maybe there should be some discussion about a trade-off there. Although we're not sure of the numbers, maybe that's something that the applicant could prove. So those are really the two main elements, although I have included a proposed condition of approval that the landscape plan demonstrate compliance with the state water efficient landscape ordinance, and that's to do a water classification for the plants and to group plants accordingly. But otherwise, we're supportive of this project, and the applicant is here to give a presentation and answer questions if you have them.
Okay. We'll do staff questions first, and then we'll. Does anybody have questions of staff? Carrie?
I don't, thank you.
No? Karen? Barbara?
Nope. Okay.
I have one. Because they are asking to enclose the front patio with a fence, does that in any way benefit them? Does it allow them to serve wine out there directly or anything like that?
It
Is there a
doesn't
purpose?
change the use that applies to
Okay.
their permit, so they can't do service of employees there, and it would still be just the casual guest taking their drink out there.
Okay.
It may provide an opportunity for them coming back to amend their use permit before the council.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And you are the applicant?
Yeah, my name's Roy Eiseminger. I'm one of the owners of the building and Jessup Sellers and
Okay.
Good Life Wine Collectors.
Yes.
So I'm just here to amplify any questions that you have. In our view, one of the issues in between the two buildings is water when water will stand in front of the building, the historical building.
In the front patio, but
Where you see
The central patio?
the X's on the right, if you will.
Oh, okay,
there,
that one, okay.
In that area,
Mm-hmm.
the doors, the double doors that go into the front, what was cottage and is now private tasting room. We actually had to do some serious waterproofing of that door area because water would come in there just due to poor draining. So one of the things that we'd like to do is take all of that concrete out in between the two buildings and basically marry the property. That's our vision here in terms of making it more to feel like it is one property as opposed to a building and then another building. By virtue of making that one grade there between the two buildings, we can bring a French drain or something, whatever Jack figures out. We can keep the water away from the historical building. And, the rest of it is honestly, is just aesthetics in our view. There's no intention for us to pour wine in that front space.
Okay.
It's more, and people come and hang there all the time, sit on the bench.
I saw some people there.
There'll be, I don't know if we'll have a bench out there or something, but we're definitely, we'd love to have a fountain. That's the initial plan. That's what the little blue square is there. So we have a little water element, get a little feng shui going. And then when we have events and so on and so forth, it'd be nice, obviously, to utilize that space. But mostly that space is just people just gathering.
And the reason for wanting a fence across the front of it?
Ultimately, those recesses, the building on the left was initially designed so that it could house several businesses. There's where it says entry, there are double doors. Both of those recesses have double doors. On the other right-hand side there, that has double doors. So our people are confused about which door to go in. So between the way Jack has the hardscape designed, it's kind of, it will be intuitively, because I hate signs that say this way to entry, right? It should be intuitive that you stay on the hardscape as opposed to go across something that has more of a, I'm headed down the garden path, right? I don't go that way. So anyway, I'll let Jack
Good evening.
say a word.
How are you?
Come on up to the microphone. Introduce yourself.
Oh, Jack Chandler, landscape architect. You did a good job. I just want to say, you forgot, and I'm here to step on his toes if he says something bad, and he's going to step in mine.
Okay.
But anyway, the front, there's a curve out there we kind of want to eliminate right in front of that. So if I pull the entry down, I'll enter more on the main part of the building. Gives me, I think, a nicer entry. Turn left, and we take away that step.
Sorry, can you please just speak in the microphone as best as you can?
Because we are televised.
Just a bunch of people watching at home, millions.
Oh, geez, thanks. I just wanted to add that, and I wanted to move the importance of the entry of that building from asymmetrical on the left side, or even to the right into the center, so that we can come in on either side and eliminate the step. And I think it would give us a nicer presentation. And the wall out in front is basically, well, those of you who know me, that's my middle name. I like steel. I like it in how it works in the garden. It has strength, but it also has a sense of being there. So he was crazy enough to buy it. And now,
I haven't bought it yet.
Oh, okay. But if you have any more questions, let me know.
Does anybody have any questions? Mikhail?
Do you have any issues with staff's request or recommendation to drop the fence to a lower level? Does that impact in any way?
I would like to trade you. I would like to take the art wall, the 7-footer, and give it to me out in front as a 42-incher. Because there's a certain sense of scale that works on that building. And if I go too much lower, then I'm going to fall over like a dog. But if I go too much higher, then I'm going to eliminate your vision or any sense of wanting to be in there. So that 42 is going to be out of the way, but it does give us a sense of heft out there in front.
Okay.
Barbara?
No, I'll come back.
I had a question. You were talking about marrying the buildings together. That entrance from the back will still be there for guests to come through from the parking lot, is that right? Or
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll actually still be able to traverse from the front to the back still. It's just going to change a little bit from where it is now, . 'Cause, 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 that ADA bathroom in the back corner and so forth will still be accessible
From
from
the outside
either
space,
direction,
yeah.
so on and so forth. And it actually, again, because we're wanting to regrade it, it gives us better, I think. There's a lot of steps every once in a while. Somebody trips, or we keep the little yellow stripe painted on the step that's right in front of our front door, and there's a little handrail there. But still, it's an issue, and we'd just like to be able
Get it all
to get it where we're not worried about somebody with a walker, or
Yeah, that makes
whatever.
sense.
Yeah, just, and then again, you look at what's happening all around us. The building is 10 years old. It's time for something to spiff it up. So we hired Spiffy.
Carrie? You have any questions?
Okay, Spiffy, here's a question for you. Coming at you. The wood fence around the patio,
Yes?
what is the purpose of that?
Okay, that's just a vertical sense, and I'm thinking it might be steel also. And you can still see in. It's just
Be a steel lattice.
a lattice coming up, so that it gives me a background for the water, the fountain in front. Is that the one
And
you're talking about?
It has the
Yeah.
one gate,
Yes.
and you're asking for it to be 5 feet tall?
Yes, because if I have this mass out in front, then I want to step up just a little bit. You can still, see over it.
We're going to be able to see over it and see through it. The last thing we want to do is create this fortress feel, like, oh, don't come in here. We still want it to be very inviting.
That
I'm-
shows it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more of, again, it's just artistic. I just look at it and went, oh, that's kind of cool. I saved his first painting of the place.
I've seen those.
Because I liked it. Well, even if we don't ever do this, I'm going to keep your old painting.
They moved it over to-
So I went
That was mine.
back in time, and it was originally approved for a 2.5-foot wrought iron fence around there.
Right, we were going to,
Because of so it would be inviting to the public, because as I understand it, part of the trade was the public would use that space when y'all were
the
not
reason
open.
for the wrought iron at that point was, my understanding was that you had to have a physical barrier if somebody was going to be outside with a glass of wine. And my concern was that somebody was going to come from that left arched area, and they were going to walk to the other side, outside, and we were going to be breaking the law by virtue of them doing so. And so, at the time, Philippe owned the place across the street, and he had just a plastic, yellow plastic chain across the front porch, right, that allowed him to pour wine on the porch. And, I just connected dots and said, oh, well, then you must have to have some sort of barrier. Well, actually, you don't. You just have to have a sign that says no alcohol beyond this point, right? So that's what we have on our post now. And this isn't about that kind of want that, to screen it off so that now we're legal, because the little 4x6 signs takes care of that. You just look at that and you go, that's kind of cool. I mean, that's literally, that's it. It's an artistic kind of thing. It isn't us trying to create a private space or whatever. I love to see somebody come and sit on our bench and eat a sandwich, whatever. That's fine with me.
I think part of staff's concern is that it was approved originally with some public space.
Right.
And so now that's kind of, people won't assume that they can come through that fence. But then the space between the buildings, the new patio that you've
Right.
created, is that going to be perceived, will there be seating out there? Will that be,
That'll be perceived as public space, and in fact, right now, there's a fence
yeah,
that encloses and makes it, unless you're going to jump the fence, you can't get there.
Mhm.
Well, that fence is going to go away.
okay.
So that's going to become much more accessible. And again, inviting. We want people, if there's somebody sitting at our little table out there having their lunch or whatever, that's,
By the way, that space is 17 by 17
Yeah.
feet, about 250 square feet.
Which space?
The patio
The new one.
between-
yeah.
Right
Between the
now, it's
buildings?
divided in half of the fence, so you got a, 6-foot or 7-foot little
Yeah,
space. out
no,
there.
it's just kind of a walkway.
Right.
Was there a provision in the original approval by town council for a square footage of public space, or just that there be some public space?
The code establishes minimum requirements. I think they've been reduced since this project was originally approved. So let me see if I can put my fingers on that.
Because I think at one point in your notes, you said if there wasn't some public space, it would have to go back to town council for consideration, but if there's, you can see the walkway, and if they put benches and things and seats.
Well, it's required to meet a minimum amount, and I can't tell based on this drawing if it does, if we're doing that type of trade-off. It very well might. I just can't confirm that.
Okay.
And just to understand
Oh, okay.
the fountain is the blue
Well,
spot.
it's not solid.
Right.
so-
And then there is green space. The fountain's in the midst of green space,
cover
but
that.
there's no access to that green space except through the fenced-in patio. Is that correct? Because it looks like hedges come up to the proposed fence.
Well, there's a green space out in front that the wall sits in. Then there's the ingress egress sidewalk.
Right,
Then there's the fountain space, and it's sitting in its own bed of green.
right. And
Okay, on either side of that, on the left side is just a boxwood hedge, a small one on the left-hand side. And then to the right of the fountain, there's a couple of stepping stones so that you can get back to that space, the patio space. And then it's all green across the face of the lower part of that building.
And so the hedge butts up to the proposed wood slat fence.
Yes,
Back on the
I
front.
don't see anybody
That front photo.
embracing
Yeah.
that fence.
Yeah.
It's meant to be a background kind of thing, and I'll probably drape it with a vine or, something with some color.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any more questions?
Last one, currently lighting in the public space, how late does that go? How much is there?
That's a good question.
The answer to that is 3 words.
Starting with I.
There is not a lot of lighting. Part of this is that we're going to be putting some more lighting around and in and around the steel wall, so on and so forth.
We put a lighting out there. I don't think any of the light source should be seen, so it will probably be down.
Be backlit
Yes.
stuff.
Or
And
down, okay.
So, if
Okay.
we get trees big enough out in front, I'll probably do a couple of small spots up into there until they get a little bit bigger, and then we'll do a moonlight effect on the ground. And,
Okay.
so,
Questions?
Question.
Okay.
I have a question. The raise of the walls to 5 feet and 42 inches from 3 feet, is that your artistically designed requirement, or is it concern for privacy or safety? The reason why they've been raised?
artistic. I sculpt also, and so I kind of mix both now. And my plans are kind of degenerating also, so they're kind of big green blobs. They used to be nice and computer generated, but I think I wasn't expecting to present to the world. It was just him, and he was easily snowed, so.
No, we appreciate your coming. Anybody have any more questions for the applicants? Yes, yes, I was going to get to that. Is there any precedent? I mean, a wall in front is required to be 36, no higher than 36 inches. So that we really don't want it to be 42.
Generally, yes, but this was originally developed as a master development plan, and I have it before you as design review, but a master development plan amendment may provide opportunity to allow a taller wall.
Okay.
With findings.
Okay. In the front view from the elevation, can you put that back up there, Nathan? You're just doing the wall, you're asking for the wall on the left side to be 42 inches?
I think that would start out at 36 because the slope
Oh,
of the
'cause
lot
the
goes
slope,
this
okay.
direction, so it starts out correctly, but as we get down this direction, I can steal
Oh,
a
I
little.
see, okay.
I can steal a little bit on the right as we come across our main entry and drop it a few inches to fool the eyeball.
Okay,
But I really wanted to have that kind of straight right across.
okay, that makes sense. Okay, so there's a little flexibility there. Okay, anybody have any more questions? No.
The maximum, I guess, at the end of the day, it's the maximum is 42 inches, and so, it's not that it's going to be.
Right,
You can,
yeah,
you know,
okay.
It's a line.
And while we're standing here, if it's okay, boss?
Yeah.
Instead of wood, I'd rather have, I envision steel.
For the vertical,
The 5-foot thin fence.
the vertical members, okay.
But still slats or
Well, they're
poles?
See
actually
the
members that are
drawing?
2 inches by 6 inches, and they're all welded on a base at the base. They're put on a concrete foundation. You don't even see any horizontals. All these do is just come up out of the ground. There's a
6
famous
inches wide.
architect that did that once called Louis Barragan, so I stole it.
But from the street, they're 2 inches? From the street view, it's 2 inches?
Yes, only
Okay.
2 inches.
Okay,
And then there'll be a 2-inch open space, 2-inch piece of steel, 2-inch open space.
okay,
So this will be their aspect to the street, if this is a street?
Yes, ma'am?
This is the 6 inches and this is the 2?
No, turn to the other.
no,
Oh, wait a
No,
minute.
yeah.
You had it right. Let's-
yeah,
The narrow will be.
The
Yeah.
narrow will
Narrow.
face the street?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that's all the questions for you guys right now, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Do we have any comments from the public on this? Okay. Okay, so, what do we think? Does anybody have any comments?
I like the explanation at the end where the 3 feet needs to be consistent for, aesthetically keeping it in line so it doesn't look like it's slanted in any way. So,
Makes good sense.
yeah, I'd like to find something to make that work. My only concern is the town council's finding for this public space and how, if this is after hours when there's nothing going on there, is this really inviting and does it seem like public space? Especially if lighting is dim, you have to pass through one gate and then there's a second one to get into this public space that's supposed to be open around the clock, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my one concern. Like if I'm walking by at 8:30 at night, nothing's happening, do I think that's a place that I can just walk in and hang out or whatever, have a baguette, whatever I'm doing, I don't know.
Doesn't seem that public.
Seems kind of weird to allow that
So I'm not sure.
onto somebody's property.
That's what I mean.
Zimmerman utilizes public space, true, I mean, really, who?
I have no problem with it, with the design, how it is, but I don't know if that finding by town council, what the purpose and reasoning was it, or was behind it. So that would be my one question.
What do you think?
Well, that's a standard that the council applies to all properties, and this element of open space is really an important element. If you look across the street at Jessup, that front patio that seems like it's at Girard, it's actually public open space rather than their private patio. So it's the approach the town council has taken because of the importance of open space. I will note, however, that the open space standard has been amended over time, and when this project was approved, it was probably a requirement that 25% be open space. A parcel of this size is now only required to have 10% as open space. But due to this link of open space and use area, it's really an area for council decision if they're changing the nature of it. And the height of the fence or wall, I think, does change the nature of it, even though they are offering new space. So where the council has spoken on this, it's hard for me to give you a
If we
different
dropped that 5-foot wall in front of the patio to 3 feet, would it avoid that confusion with the town council?
I think so, and I included justification for it in the staff report, that I think that still gives you your eye visual access to that space, and then you can see the gate and the stepping stones, and while it may not be quite as open as the wrought iron, and it's even a little higher, maybe it serves that same purpose.
So we could,
and I understand what he's saying, that he wants to have this,
right,
this going up as he goes back, so maybe 3 feet or 3.5 feet or 4 feet. I don't know what the answer is to achieve what they need while maintaining the nature of the open space.
so how do we determine that?
You discuss it.
Well, I know, if we decided 3 feet, then are we done, or did they have to go to town council with that?
I think 3 feet is substantially in compliance or consistent with their approval, that it wouldn't.
Because that's what they were approved for before.
Oh, yeah, the wrought iron.
They were
one.
approved for
Okay.
that before, weren't they?
Got it.
3 feet.
Yeah,
It was 2.5,
Oh.
but I think
2.5.
close enough.
yeah, okay, okay, got it.
Sandra, if we approve 5 feet, are we granting exceptions? Because
I think it would come from you as a recommendation to council at that point, and that we would take it to them to say, the CDRB approved this, and then we'll have a more in-depth evaluation of open space, so we can share that with council.
I do share the concern, 5 feet is less friendly as 3 feet.
So then if we decided to ask them, approve it with 3 feet, and if they decided they wanted it 5
to go
feet,
before
they
town
could have to
council.
take it to town council. So that's up to them, but
Correct, and you may want to vote or give a recommendation as to 5 feet if we think they want to take it that
Okay.
next step.
Is the issue, the 5 feet issue with the wall, is that because behind it or in front, that is considered the open space?
That little
That
alcove
little
area.
patio area?
Yeah.
Ah,
but they've created
right.
that open space too now.
But it is unusual, it's only open space after Jessup is closed, so it's not round-the-clock open
So that
space.
gate stays open all the time then? There's no like closure to that steel gate that's 5 feet tall?
No, it would be a working gate.
Because it's a public space, it stays open, right? Because it's public space.
I don't think it would be necessary to stay open as long as you know that you can open and enter a gate.
That's a little weird.
Kind of, I wouldn't want to have it enclosed with a 5-foot gate after hours and have people go in there, Did you have a comment?
Well, just one comment. Even though we have the ability to say, this is our space while we're open, we don't do that. And have no intention to, honestly. I mean, again, if people are sitting out front, it's like, well, how's come people are sitting out front there? It draws attention to the building. We want people in that space.
Sure.
And I don't care if they're drinking our wine or they're eating a sandwich from, wherever. Doesn't matter to us. We want the space utilized. And so if that clarifies that in any way.
Could you put
Our
a 5-foot section of fence just behind the fountain to give you the openness and leave the other sides open to add the open look to it? By closing it and putting a gate, you're really closing it off.
Yeah. I
mean, that's
I look at it from and I look at Jack Strong and I go, well, that's really
very
very pretty, so I'm loath to say I want half a loaf kind of thing. If you don't want the 5 foot, if you don't don't want to approve that. I understand that, and if we need to go back to council, as my partners and Jack and I confer, and we say, well, look, that's important. Let's go ask. Well, then we'll do that.
Okay.
We're not. This isn't. We're not trying to color outside the lines. We're just trying to bring something that's beautiful to the town and works for us, enhances the building, so on and so forth. That's, it's not
Okay.
there's not an alternate agenda.
Okay. Overall, I think it'll be a nice improvement, enhancement. Carrie, you have some thoughts on where we go?
Yeah, concentrating on the, what I call the interior fence, the steel fence. It seems to me when it was originally approved, it was an open fence, but you could see a lot through it. And now we have a fence within a fence as far as encouraging public use of the space, because we have a 3-foot fence, which is tall enough to keep people out. It wraps around the corners. Then we have a row of hedges. Then we have a steel fence inside. So I don't really think it encourages, I think it's beautiful, I really do, but I don't think it encourages use of public space. And I think in particular the 3-foot wall on the south end, even if the new patio is going to be sort of the new public space, there's not an easy way to get in there. You have to pass it and double back. I like the design a lot, but it just seems to me that the exterior fence, the rust wall, is more of the fence. Kim, I like your idea of if somehow you use the steel as art to go behind the fountain and then leave the ends open so that it is offset. You have rust steel, but the public could get in there and can see it's truly an art piece. I could go with that.
And even if it's like this archway or something that loops over, so it's two very big openings on the side and that backdrop.
Even if the steel behind the fountain went 5 feet as an art piece, but you could come in the rust walls and have immediate ingress to or egress from your patio. And I don't know if I need to disclose this, but I'm a wine club member, so I've spent time on your patio. So this is really, it's beautiful, but I do think we need to encourage public use.
Since that was the
Okay,
point.
well, let me, Jack had an epiphany while we were sitting there. He said, well, what if we just lose the gate and an equal amount of space on the other side of the fountain?
Yeah.
So
I think
there's
that's what
an
we're saying,
aesthetic.
yeah.
There's an aesthetic there, so you still have that balance.
Yes, and then it looks much more open, and the
Yeah.
fence looks like a
Because again,
backdrop
it's
to
not
the
our
fountain.
it's
Okay.
not our intention to close that off.
Okay.
It's just to make it prettier.
And how wide is the gate?
Well, they're going to get rid of the gate.
Yeah, we'll lose the gate.
Well, you'll have an opening. So how wide is the opening? On each side, you'd have a 4-foot?
Or I'll look at the columns that go in between, and it looks like I can get by with 6 to 8 feet behind the fountain. And we'll cut it down.
Okay.
I just want something for that fountain, because the fountain is stone, chisel stone from Millie. And it's going to be sitting in here. It is a yin-yang situation for me. Usually old, new, strong. But it's I think that we can get by with 4-foot lost on the right and the left-hand side. And it might be more so.
And so then that brings us to the height. I mean, would 4 feet be sufficient? Because I still think 5 is pretty, you could not see through it,
I think.
really.
Asking me now as an artist, 5.
Okay. Then I'm,
That's, I've given you the 4, given you the 4, I've given you the 5.
I think you were a horse trader in your last life, Spiffy.
And you talk about, this hedge and the wall, this. Oh, look at you. You're wearing a sweater. Oops, you're wearing something else underneath. Oops, there's your skin.
Now you're getting a little personal, Spiffy.
It's the same thing, you know, this whole landscape is much like wardrobe, you know, so I have a top on, I have another top, and I have another top, so it just works its way into the garden.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think we're getting there. Does somebody want to craft a motion? Want me to do it?
Go with the 5. I will just say I can't go with the 5 feet. So I could make a motion, but it would not include the 5 feet.
I will make a motion to accept the project as presented. On the conditions of approval, we didn't really talk about the tall wall, but I guess we need to talk about that.
Probably.
Item number 3. The rusted steel walls in the 15-foot front yard setback shall be reduced to 3 feet in height. That's that tall 7-foot piece in the corner.
We'll give you that.
Really? Okay.
Initially, we thought we needed that. We didn't know what Stewart's property was.
Oh, okay. Now that the wall's there, you know. So you're just eliminating that wall?
We can eliminate that wall.
Okay.
Entirely.
Okay.
We didn't know what it was going to look like. So that's no idea.
Could be a piece.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we'll approve it at 3 feet, and as the conditions of approval are written, and then if you decide to take it out, you can take it out.
They want 42 inches.
I'm sorry?
They want 42 inches. A max height for
well,
that wall.
number 4. Oh, yeah, that really. Oh, the whole. Okay, not the tall one. Okay. The conditions of approval, item number 3. We're allowing them, due to the slope, because of the slope of the road, to take that to a height of 42 inches, to allow it to go to 42 inches. The wood fence enclosure around the patio can remain at 5 feet, but it will only be the center section, and the side sections will be eliminated. And number 5, that they have to provide a landscape plan, irrigation plan that conforms to the state water efficient landscape ordinance. That include it all?
I think number 4, we need to address the wood fence versus the steel fence.
Oh, that it's changed to steel. Okay.
And also, we need to address how wide the opening on each side should be.
We can't do that specific. We're allowing them to do it to 5. The motion that I'm presenting allows it to be 5 feet in the center behind the fountain, and there's columns for the trellis there, and then to the side of the columns would be open.
How wide is that?
I didn't have. It's not dimensioned on here, but there's columns. So it would be from here to here would be open, and from here to here would be open. I don't think so. But you don't have to approve my motion.
Yeah, from the columns to the building.
To the wall, yeah, to the building.
I'm going to guess between 5 and 6 feet.
Yeah, at least. So this is like 6 feet, 5 feet, 5
Could be
feet,
as
5
much
feet,
as
6 feet.
8, but
Okay. Okay, can anybody second that? That I made a mess out of it? Is anybody interested?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Yeah, absolutely. She,
No, you don't have to.
All in favor?
Oh, could we have one more? Could I have a clarification on your motion?
Okay.
The 5-foot steel, are you saying it goes only behind the fountain, or does it hook to the building?
No.
Have an opening and then go behind the fountain?
Just behind the fountain, in the center of the patio, behind the fountain, between the columns.
5 feet is here.
Okay, so then it will not attach to
The
the
sides
building
are
on the
open.
ends? Okay.
5 to 6 feet open on each side.
So the opening on each side will be
The
5 to
5 feet
6
is
feet.
behind.
It's pretty clear.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. We got approval with those stipulations. Thank you for your patience.
We designed it together.
There you go.
It is a process. not used to the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Okay, we move on to item number 16-731-6660 Jefferson Street. We had one nearby resident provide a email that says they are Eric Knight and family at 6638 Jefferson Street. Could not attend the meeting because of work obligations, but they would like to express their support for Stephen Miller's and Scott Owens' design review amendment request. They've reviewed their presentation and greatly appreciate their efforts to meet Old Town Design Review guidelines, and the remodel will be a great addition to our neighborhood. So, with that input from the public, we can move on to the staff report.
Good evening. Tonight you have before you design review for modifications to the two dwellings on this parcel. And I know some of you were on the ZDRB back in 2013 when a similar plan came before you. That plan has expired and the applicant is seeking to, in any case, make modifications to that. So you have some of those same elements, but some changes as well. So the subject parcel is about a 5,000 square foot parcel. And since last before you, the applicants were successful in a lawsuit against the neighbor to obtain a 5-foot exclusive easement on the south side. And that's important because where the north building elevation used to sit on a property line, and with the 5-foot setback, it meets the minimum city requirements as well as building code requirements as to fire separation. We have the two buildings on this parcel. The front building is a single-family dwelling, and it's a little over 1,000 square feet, and it has a covered front porch, a horizontal wood siding, and double-hung windows. It's set back 20 feet from front property line. The second unit back in that southeast corner is an approximately 675 square foot structure, and it also features horizontal wood siding, although it has aluminum sliding windows, a gable roof, and it's set back 3 feet from side property line and 5 feet from rear. And it is an older structure. We know it's more than 50 years old, but it isn't located in the town's, or listed in the town's historic resources inventory. So I'm just calling that to your attention. And then existing FAR is 32%. And since this property was developed prior to the town's codes, we're looking at several legal nonconforming aspects of the development, including lot size, setbacks, FAR, and parking. So I share some of the history of the original approval, but I'm not going to go into that here. What is proposed before you is to, let me go to, that's okay, we don't need a site plan, but it's to remove 148 square foot addition at the rear of the main dwelling. It's really a sunroom at backup structure, and then to replace it with a pretty comparable first floor addition, then to later add a second floor addition of about 440 square feet. And I guess we can go to the elevations. It shows what the structure will look like, and let's see, the left-hand column in the middle shows that rear building elevation. So the flat one-story addition with the two-story addition above it and a large deck on top of that. There are many changes to fenestration to make the space more usable and enjoyable, with taller header height and large windows. And the applicant proposes to replace siding with new horizontal wood siding and to paint the structure white. So the second residential unit at the rear of the parcel would have approximately 288 square feet removed, and what this does is increase the rear yard setback. Where it's 3 to 5 feet now, it increases that substantially, so that that's more of a backyard than a building right up to property line. So in many respects, this design is consistent with the town code, and I mentioned some of those elements in here. There are a couple of items I wanted to just touch on, and one of those is that it's legal nonconforming as to floor area ratio. It's at 32%, where the code limits a maximum of 25%. And the applicant, in changing some of the buildings by removing the rear building and adding it to the front, they're really maintaining that current FAR. And so where the amount of nonconformity isn't increased, we look at it as consistent with the code. They're maintaining setbacks on the side, maintains roof height, and they're just changing the nature of the location of it. I do note that, well, when we talk about FAR, there's FAR of 25% for the main dwelling, but on qualifying parcels, they're also entitled up to 300 square feet for a second dwelling. The minimum size to qualify is 6,000 square feet. So it hasn't been applied to this property because this property could not build a second dwelling if they didn't already have one as legal nonconforming. But since it is legal nonconforming, there is some merit in allowing them to have that 300 square foot exemption, which would reduce the FAR to 27%, which is a lot more in keeping with the FAR. I do note the second story windows and decks, since this is a new element and the building is also in close proximity to some neighbors, especially that north side neighbor that lost essentially 5 feet of their backyard, so that's become smaller. The applicant, though, is proposing the high above eye level windows, which I think really addresses that issue of privacy, but the applicant is also proposing this large deck that is the full extent of the one-story structure, and I'm suggesting a condition of approval that they pull that back so it's not overlooking the neighbor. I noted that this building is over 50 years old, so when we have a building of that type, we require an applicant to submit a review by a third-party historian. This is a historian from San Francisco, and he finds that the changes are in keeping with the nature of the structure. I note the parking in the staff report because it's non-conforming as to the spaces that are required. The main dwelling has a requirement of 2, one of which is covered, and the second dwelling requires a third. These are present on site just in surface level parking, but not in the structure. And when you look at the parking code requirements, parking is required for additions and then also for change in use. And we believe at staff level that it's not triggered in this case. And in any case, 2 cars can fit tandem style in the parking or in the driveway. The applicant is proposing a project phasing where they would do the 1-story addition in the main dwelling now, follow that up with the demolition to the second dwelling later, and finish with a third phase of the second story. And if the applicant proceeds in this manner, the project will stay in conformance with FAR, and they'd like 5 years to complete this level of work. So we do support that timeline, but we've included a condition that the rear demo would have to start before the second story is built. So we are recommending approval subject to the conditions of approval that are attached to the staff report. I do want to mention that I did speak with 2 members of the public at the counter today. The first of whom was concerned with property lines because this is the Old Town Historic District. Property lines are not where they appear to be, and the lawsuit with the neighbor to the north is proof of this. We probably would see some similar conditions to the south, and yet those really haven't been addressed. We didn't require a survey as part of this work because they're not proposing to move anything closer to property lines, and they're actually pulling it back. I was able to explain that to the neighbor, and I think they understood. But they do have a concern because property lines are not where they appear to be. Then the adjoining neighbor to the rear also dropped in to look at building elevations and windows and what the impact would be to their privacy. And they seem to be pleased with the windows because of the setback, but also agreed with staff's recommendation as to pulling back the extent of that second floor deck. So I wanted to share those comments with you. That concludes my presentation, but the applicant is here as well.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Does anybody have questions of staff?
Nope. Oh, okay.
Where is the location of the deck? Is it on facing the east or north?
It faces northeast over that back building section,
Okay.
the first story.
It's not really shown on any of the plan views, is it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Which one?
Shoot, I don't have the drawing set with me. Hold on. Yes, we do. Give me 1 second to let you know which sheet it's on.
For the sunroom?
It's all about elevation.
A30.
The plan view though. A30, okay.
Oh, I guess no, it's not shown in, it's not shown
Is
in
it
plan
over?
view.
Yeah.
But it's
that's on the
directly
first floor.
over the sunroom, so if you
Okay.
look at the new first floor plan, that first
Okay.
floor plan is the second floor deck
Okay.
above, and then the master suite itself is over the main building.
Okay. Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, this part here.
That is the
yeah.
deck.
Yeah.
Over the
So you're asking, cut that back by 5 feet?
Push the sunroom back 5 feet. is what
Back
you're
to the flush with the wall?
Flush to that north building elevation,
Yeah,
which
to
is
there,
set back 8
okay.
feet from property line, where the first story is set back 5 feet from property line.
Okay. Okay.
Can you point us on there where it would be cut back to, please?
So right there.
Edge of building elevation.
Yeah.
Rather than having it extend.
Yeah.
On the floor plans, can you show me, please? Can't get it in my mind's eye.
I don't really have a good floor plan.
Here, let me
Sure.
see.
Up if we need to pull up that.
So it would pull it back about
To the
here.
edge of the building.
So the deck is this whole area right here,
That one, yeah.
and it
Okay.
would pull it back 3 feet this way. This is a 5-foot setback, it would be an additional 3 feet, so maybe where this pointer is.
You're almost
So it'd be in the length of the deck,
Yeah.
not the
You're
width?
literally right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Where the bedroom coincides. So we do something
Okay.
like that.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Would the applicant like to come up and say something? Introduce yourself?
Thank you. My name is Scott Owens. I'm the co-owner at 6660 Jefferson Street. And thank you for the thoughtful presentation, Sandra. You may have received this project statement, but I thought I'd reiterate and read it. Although the ZDRB had previously granted unanimous approval to our project, changes to the property itself and to the project have been adjusted enough to warrant bringing it back before the Yountville ZDRB for a new approval. The overall aesthetic will be the same as what was previously approved. This project will complete major renovations to this agrarian cottage set in Yountville's Old Town District, taking it from a structure meant for weekend getaways to a full-time residence with new systems, electrical and plumbing, upgrades, and refined finishes. We'll also make structural enhancements such as a new foundation, windows and doors, and finish the attic space for a new master suite that capitalizes the views from this higher vantage. All changes are meant to modernize while maintaining the historic character and charm of the house. In order to satisfy requirements for floor area ratio, we will remove poorly constructed parts of the rear structure that was long ago converted to living space before completing the second floor of the main residence. This secondary space gets new fenestration at the street-facing elevation that allows for the building to look more like a renovated garage to be used as an art studio guest quarters rather than a secondary house, thereby giving top billing to the newly renovated main residence. Thank you.
Great. Anybody have any questions of the applicant?
Actually, one question. This is just taking examples from prior meetings. I see that you're interested in adding the heating and cooling, and I don't know what setbacks look like now, but with the HVAC units that need to go in, there's been thoughts to where they would go?
Most certainly, yes. On the south elevation, there are 3 panels, there were to be 3 French doors. In fact, at the 2014 approval, it was French doors on all sides. But this darker one in the middle to the right, that will be utilities. And in fact, my father, who's a structural engineer, designed the space inside for the units and other things in there. So it's in that general area.
Awesome. Okay, perfect.
Good question.
That's it.
Great question. Barbara, you have any questions? Karen? Do you object to any of the conditions of approval that were put on here?
No, I do not.
Okay, that's a good place to start.
Do you have any, are there any restrictions in your use of the easement?
There are none. It's an exclusive easement for at least 5 feet on the north elevation, up to where the utility lines turn in the backyard. And so that has been carefully planned prior to the structural drawings.
And who is the grantor on the easement?
The beneficiary of that easement?
Well, you're the beneficiary, so who, from whom did you get the easement?
Napa Civil Court. Judge
Well,
Diane
who's the other
Price.
owner? Was it your neighbors?
Sure.
Okay.
The former owner, Ms. Elizabeth Gillich,
Okay.
who no longer lives there. We have new neighbors there now.
So, but the Gillich parcel is still owned in fee ownership the same, and you all just were granted a use easement, an exclusive use easement.
Yes, an exclusive
over
easement,
5 feet.
and there is to be some tax consideration where we, as the exclusive use of that, will pay that portion of property taxes to Napa County.
And was that part of the court's order or an agreement between you and the
It was part of the
adjacent?
court order.
Okay, so it's being treated like a fee,
Mm-hmm.
like you're the fee owner.
Yes, and in fact, during the proceedings, we paid for that parcel during the legal proceedings. So in addition to the tax responsibility, it was decided by the court that we were to pay for that portion of land.
But you paid for an easement, not to become the record owner of it.
I believe so.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions of the applicant?
I guess if you have that issue with the neighbor to the north, does that affect your property line with the neighbor to the south?
There is a similar unresolved property. The house, our property is behind the fence. However, on the survey, it shows both the fence line and the property line.
So the property line,
South.
your property line that you own is into neighbor's yard to the south?
It's behind a fence, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
If the applicant accepts the conditions of approval, does anybody have any other
I'd like to
questions?
make a comment, and I apologize for bringing this up late in the game. I didn't notice till I was looking at the site plan, but we calculated the north setback to easement as the 5 feet. If you look at that northeast building corner,
What plan?
look at sheet A 1.0.
It also shows on what's on the screen.
Okay, yes, Nathan's showing it right here. So at that northeast corner, if you go directly east, they haven't indicated that that meets the 5-foot setback, and I would just include a condition that they prove that condition and are required to meet that for the building.
Okay.
Question, Sandra.
Yes.
Do we usually grant a permit for 5 years? Why is the condition for 5 years requested?
It is requested because they intend to phase the project into the 3 different phases, and the design review chapter of the zoning ordinance permits a term of 5 years unless it is shortened as a condition of approval, and we typically recommend a 2-year term for design review. although since the applicant has proposed phasing, and it is really the fallback option in the zoning ordinance, we're recommending the 5-year term here.
And may I make a follow-up question to staff on that? So, as I read your staff report, this will be the last 2-story home on this block, and so anything else we would have to find a variance
On the
or an
street.
exemption
Yeah.
on the street.
Yeah.
So, my point, circling back to the 5 years, is this basically gives a 5-year placeholder to a second-story home, and I do have some issue with that. I mean, I guess I can come back to the applicant. Why? Because you've come and you got approval and it lapsed, and now you're coming again asking for 5 years, so it's like an 8-year span that we're looking at here, right? 7 or 8 years total. I mean, could you do it in 2 years?
It's quite possible. But I would prefer to have the 5-year extensions in order to concentrate on the different phases of the project. First, the foundation and the enhancement of the first floor structure of the main house, then the demolition of the square footage in the rear, and then coming back to the final phase being the second story.
And then I'd also jump in that it is a significant amount of work, so obviously there's the financing issue, but by building the first story, it is designed and engineered to engineering standards to hold that second story. So they're going to the efforts now to prepare for it, and simply, you know, working their budget to come back and do that section when they can.
And then a couple of other questions. Since they are doing major alterations, is there anything like we discussed earlier about the signs, that if there's a significant redimensioning or this or that, it's no longer legally non-conforming? Is there a similar code piece for buildings?
No, the non-conforming section on of the code allows an expansion of a non-conforming structure so long as that area of work conforms to the code. So there is an option to allow it. I guess the signs are more strict than non-conforming structures.
So even though it's a significant renovation, they don't have to come back to 0.25?
No.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else with a question?
I think
Or
my
comment?
concern for the 5 years is for the little street of construction project, living in the construction project for 5 years seemed to be extensively long for the neighborhood.
Well, I'll let the applicant address that. I don't think it's a continuous 5-year construction project, but 3 different phases over time.
It's a good question.
Yes, that is true. The first phase being the main house. Second, it would not be happening all at the same time. It would be, the plan is to have it be clean-cut 3 phases.
And
That is a long construction project, though.
And it's, the way it would be written is the third phase would only have to be commenced within 5 years, correct?
Correct.
Would not have to be completed within 5 years. So could stretch longer.
That's a long time.
So long as they are diligent with the completion of work and they call for building inspections, it could extend beyond that. Unless you modify that condition.
I mean, it's a beautiful project and it would be a nice improvement, so we want to encourage you to do it.
What's typical for new, what's
2.
2 is the norm?
Isn't 2 the normal?
The reason we modify the design review to 2 years is because use permit approval is good for 2 years. So on a commercial project, we want those two terms to be consistent with one another. Typically with residential construction, a 5-year term is normal. It doesn't presume construction during that whole 5-year term.
Right.
But it gives you 5 years to pull together everything you need to get your project done and to have the assurance that you can do what you've set out to do. And in this case, where you engineer a first story, it allows you to come back and build that second story. Gives an owner that assurance.
Okay.
But
Makes
if
sense.
we did a 2-year, really all we're saying is, like you said, if at the end of, if 1 year and 10 months, you guys come and say, here, we've pulled a permit for the foundation, we've broken ground with this, it could spin on past the 2 years. So it's not like you have to be complete in 2 years. It would just give you 2 years to make a bona fide start.
On all 3 phases, though.
Well, I think just on the first phase, because the phasing is not, I don't think, material to us. It's just we've approved the project. The phasing is material in that the second house demo would have to go first before the second story
It is
goes on.
material because they couldn't start the first phase and then stop for an extended period and still have it be active. You have to phone for a building permit every 6 months. You need to do work and call for that inspection, so it keeps the project moving. So if they were to have a longer gap in there, it could potentially void the project.
When was this first approved? The design review?
It was
2013?
approved back in 2013. I think it was April 2013.
I think it was
it?
March 12th, 2014.
It was 14, right, because obviously 2 years.
Oh, yeah, that is 2.
And just a comment quick on the taking place, unless I'm reading this wrong, it says it's the 4th 2-story house out of 8 houses total, so it wouldn't be the last available, correct?
Well, that's the 50% threshold,
Oh,
but
okay.
the design ordinance does give the ZDRB the option to approve more 2-stories.
Oh, okay. Got it.
At a public hearing if the findings are made.
Okay.
And staff has just been waiting for the blocks to be developed at 50%. We're just not there yet, but we're going to have more owners wanting 2-story. There's no doubt.
Okay.
May I get some water?
Yes. Oh, I don't know if we have water, do we, in there?
Here, I have an unopened bottle.
Probably not. Does someone want to
pristine.
propose?
It's dripping. Oh, really?
It's just probably 2 weeks old.
That's not good.
Does someone want to propose a motion?
Well, I would make a motion that we approve the project instead of the 5 years, 30 months, which is 2.5 years for construction to be begun. And the other conditions of approval that staff recommended, the second floor deck be reduced in size and the 288 square feet demolished before building permit for the second story addition. Is there anything else that we've talked about?
No. So that would, you're saying 2.5 years?
The 5-foot setback from that northeast corner?
Right.
Yes, and
Okay, you got that.
In the 2.5 years?
Right.
Does anybody want to second that? All in favor? One?
Me.
Just one? Okay. So, somebody want to craft a motion with a different outline? Different conditions of approval, Mikhail?
No, I'm still not convinced on which way I want to sway. I'm sorry.
Is it the 5-year?
Yeah.
So if I craft a motion to accept the project with the conditions of approval as written with the addition of the 5-foot setback in the northeast corner, does anybody want to second that?
I'll second.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
We get 3 out of 5. So that passes. You got it.
Thank
5
you.
years.
Member Allen, Member Dorman, do we want to record those as nays?
Yes.
Just real quick.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think you have to say all
Yeah.
opposed.
Well, we got 3 in favor And
But
two
I think you have to
opposed.
call a vote for
Call the
All
vote.
opposed.
Since it wasn't unanimous,
We just need to be able to record who said nay, so.
all opposed?
All opposed?
Oh, okay.
Two.
Oh, I
Okay,
see.
thanks.
I get it.
We're good.
I didn't say, no, we weren't all opposed.
The
Okay.
technicality, I just.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Good luck with your
Jim looked
project.
great.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. There are staff and board reports. Are there any? Karen has asked to leave for a business meeting. Is that
I'm like
allowed?
15 minutes late. I stayed
Okay.
for this. Then
Okay.
Okay.
I'll let you know if anything comes up.
We'll probably.
There's probably nothing I say that's worth listening to.
Nah.
So just really quickly, wanted to give update of some events that might be worth y'all's attention. On April 30th, at 2 o'clock in the community center, there is a Go Green workshop where they will be addressing different items related to the town's climate action plan. Even though at this time it is not considered a part of the general plan, it definitely contains policies that will be related to the general plan. Encourage any of you to attend, just so you know about that. April 30th from 2 to 4 o'clock.
Who's leading that?
That would be the Yountville Go Green team, who is a council-appointed committee that is charged with the creation and drafting of the climate action plan for the town. It will include policies and goals related to energy conservation, waste, recycling, water, wastewater, all in efforts towards the town's goal of reducing the greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay.
Second, survey results are in from the
Oh,
townwide
yeah,
community
yeah, yeah.
survey that occurred a while ago.
Yeah.
And on the second May meeting, so that's the May 17th meeting of the town council, there will be a presentation given by those that conducted and analyzed the survey. I will say, while not spoiling that meeting, we're happy to address the results. They are positive, and overall, based on the benchmarks with other communities that have taken this survey across the country, as well as those that are considered resort or destination communities, Yountville fared very well.
Good.
So you will see those at that May 17th meeting. Highly encourage you all to attend that. That'll be a fun presentation. It's going to be the first thing on the agenda, too. So if you're worried
Good.
about staying for the whole meeting, don't.
That's always nice.
It's fun.
And that concludes any staff reports.
A couple of us attended the California League of Cities Planning Commission.
Yep.
It was excellent. Time well spent.
Yes.
It was very educational.
Thanks,
Very
Scott.
informative.
Thank you for allowing us to go to that. I found it very helpful.
Good.
It was a good
I like
format.
that feedback.
They
Thank
were
you.
an hour, 45 minutes long. It was informational, and it allowed for questions and stuff. I enjoyed it.
Even though Nathan made me sick.
I did not.
And lunch was
Should have
really
stopped
good.
drinking my water.
Okay, I will move to.
May I just ask, what
Yeah,
about our
yeah.
joint session with council?
We're,
Speak on that.
we are trying to plan that. We're looking to schedule it in May. So trying to pull together an agenda and find a date that might work. So I think Steve Rogers and I will be reaching out to you to see when that might be. First, probably meeting with you, Kim, to see, discuss some topics before we open it to the rest of the group.
You may see a doodle poll showing up soon to talking about available
Love those.
dates. So.
And then the sign ordinance, is that kind of on hold until we meet with the council together?
Probably yes. Staff just hasn't even had a chance to get to it with current workload, but yes, that's definitely one of the items that will be presented and discussed, and really a plan established, I think, at that meeting.
Thank you.
Amongst the issue of open space, too, I would say, that is something that we have been wanting to discuss. We had noted that for our agenda, and tonight's meeting just sort of highlighted
Reinforced
that
it.
it is something
Has
we
to be
need
more
to
defined.
really talk about again. What's it intended to get at?
Okay.
Is R&D kitchen their garden area? That's considered open space, right?
That is.
Okay. So that.
Okay. Well, then make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.